Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I've got two questions. The first is what I would call the banking paradox. On the one hand, we're told that the stress tests concern systemic risks, and they have produced satisfying results. This is what Mr. Draghi said at the end of October, beginning of November. Yet on the other hand, we're setting up a banking union with banking supervision, plus the single resolution mechanism and the resolution board. And do you not think that banking supervision has been enough, taking account of the fact that the stress tests have produced satisfying results? That's the first question. Second question, imagine a fictional scenario. One of the big European banks in the Eurozone goes bankrupt. Let's imagine the worst case. Can you tell us, in France, for example, about the three first steps you would take in the context of a resolution plan, which you would hope to lead? Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you for those two questions. I think that the depth of the crisis we've been facing since 2008 is not necessarily perceived in the same way in all European countries. It is taken much more seriously in some countries where there was an almost complete collapse of the banking system because of the scope and the depth of the crisis, which is not always the case in every country, including France, which perhaps thought that their banking sector was more resistant than in other countries. I think that facing this type of crisis in Europe, which is still costing us today, taking account of the public support which had to be provided, we had to produce a series of responses. And so we've got to restore confidence. I think that's the fundamental idea. And that confidence is based, as I said in my introduction, on a development of the legislative powers and a development of the institutions. And so at those two levels, you in the European Parliament, the Council and the Commission have made exceptional progress to provide practical responses on those two levels, from an institutional point of view in Frankfurt and also in Brussels, and from the point of view of instruments, banking supervision, but also resolution. So the stress tests were positive, and I think we're all very pleased about that. And that was the proof that a great deal had already been done. And I think that by way of introduction to supervision, this is particularly important, so that we can work on a solid basis thanks to the stress tests carried out and the review of the quality of assets. Can we just leave it at supervision? Certainly not. I think that this adds powers to the authorities, which are very important powers, and they can provide responses so that confidence can be restored. We can guarantee access to critical functions. And I think that from that point of view, the legal arsenal with which the Single Resolution Board has been equipped is very powerful and should help to reassure the future of the banking sector at the service of the European economy. If, despite that, a large bank were to go bankrupt, what would we do? I think that, first of all, we would need to see whether the bankruptcy required us to bring about resolution. There is this general idea that we're going to save all banks, that we're going to have to save all banks. No, that's not it. Generally not. Banks are enterprises like others, although they do different tasks. So the first step would be to make sure that it is necessary to have resolution, to preserve critical functions and to ensure financial stability and so on. If that were the case, then among the first measures, we would have to use the resolution plan which has been put together, but which might not cover exactly the crisis affecting that particular bank. So it would have to be adapted. And among the most immediate tools, there is certainly that of a change in management, a change in the executives, and then implementing the preservation of critical functions by means of a relay bank. And this would be accompanied by a bailing measure of some sort. So I think that in that way, getting hold of the institution and then a division between what must be preserved and what can be given to a relay bank with a bailing measure internally, this would make it possible to recapitalise that bank. That's one possibility among others.